Hello, welcome back to Young Penitent. Today I am going to give you a review of an event that took place over Memorial Day weekend, which I attended. And I'm also going to do a book review of On Resistance to Evil by Force by Ivan Alexandrovich Ilyin. And there's a reason why I'm choosing this book, as you'll see, because in my review of the event, I'm going to link this to one of the talks that was made at the event. So the LLAPH event was an event held over the weekend at Helios Farms, and LLAPH stands for Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness. And this was the first annual event at the farm of something that they hope to be doing every year going forward. And it was a great event. Helios Farms is a raw milk dairy in Yoncalla, Oregon, and they besides raw milk, they also do some beef, chickens, eggs, pigs. Really good, healthy, nourishing foods that they go all organic, and it's all no pharmaceuticals. They don't use any drugs or pharmaceuticals with their animals, or even on the entire farm. And so they put on this event, which was going to be a camping out event. They invited a bunch of people to come, and there was going to be speakers and music. And as you see in the thumbnail, I put a photograph of the stage that they had built on the farm up there on the hills. So people know Oregon. If you're not from Oregon, you might think, you hear the word Oregon and you might think Portland and liberal and hellhole or something like that. And that's true. You know, you can describe Portland that way and you'd be accurate, you know, and there's also some other cities in Oregon which are quite liberal. To my shame, I live in one of those areas. But you don't have to go very far out of the cities in Oregon. I can drive 5 minutes and I'm in a red area, and there will be Trump signs up, and you know, people such as would, you know, hold dear the Second Amendment, that kind of people. So there's a lot of, you know, salt of the earth people, similar to how California is in some areas. They have red in the areas and really blue areas. So that way, you know, there may be a misconception about Oregon in that way. So down here in Yoncalla, it's kind of like hill country, you know. It's like Second Amendment people, Trump voters, and so at this farm, I've been friends with the people there at the farm for many years. And in order to hi John in the chat. That's awesome. Okay, so something that is great about this farm that I find is great is that in order to come, they have on their website, heliosfarms.com, you can go check it out. They say, if you want to come to our farm, but you have chosen to take part in this experimental medical procedure, which, if you understand what I'm talking about, the experimental medical procedure that came out in the last few years, they say don't come. So how do you like that? I mean, these are my kind of people. You know, they say, how do you like that for, you know, turning the world on its head, turning the world upside down? You know, if you want to exclude us from some areas of public life, then I guess we can exclude you too. That's the kind of attitude they had. You know, so anyhow, we went down there, and John actually came. John's in the chat. Thank you. We went down there on Friday evening, and we set up our tents on the hillside, and there was they brought out food, beef that they had grown themselves and grilled. There was great music. We had some very talented musicians, some country music, bluegrass. It was, and then they lit a bonfire, which kept us warm because it had kind of become chilly. And that was the first night. It was the food and the music mainly was what was going on. And the second day there were speakers. Besides, there was also music throughout the whole event. It went from Friday through to Monday. We actually left Sunday evening, but on Saturday there were some speakers. There was one was Dr. Levy, who talked about orthomolecular medicine and vitamin C mainly. And I think the other speaker was, you could probably call the keynote speaker, was Scott Kesterson, who has who's an interesting fellow. He has a YouTube channel, a podcast, a website. It's called Bars FM. If you feel like checking it out. He's a guy who's former military, CIA actually, who did work in Afghanistan for many years. And he was talking about, he's basically saying what his idea is that we're at the point where we were with the Declaration of Independence, like 200 years ago, where it was time to, buck the system and start our own government. That's what he is saying. He's saying we kind of need to, and he comes from a Christian viewpoint. He's not an Orthodox Christian. He's just, probably non-denominational or whatever. But I did want to tie this into the book. I did want to discuss one thing that I disagreed with him about in his talk, because he was, he's a warrior, he's from the military, and he was trying to say that Christ is a warrior, Christ is a fighter, and he uses his examples like when he's casting people out of the temple, that kind of attitude that he was highlighting. And I felt that this might have been a mischaracterization of Christ, who I see more as a humble and meek person, not so much a fighter. And my evidence of this is when Jesus was questioned by Pontius Pilate. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight." So he's kind of like their idea is trying to establish the kingdom here, but the kingdom is not here. The kingdom is not of this world, I think if you want, using force is great, but when Jesus says that we are to use force to take the kingdom of heaven, it's mainly force against ourselves, which is, keeping vigil, fasting, forcing yourself to read spiritual books, even if you don't feel like it maybe at the time. These are the kind of practices that is how you take the kingdom of heaven by force. So, I don't expect him to understand that. If he's not Orthodox and he's hasn't studied it, he's not going to know these things. Anyhow, I wanted to make that point, my criticism of his talk. But besides that, I appreciated everything else he was saying. Hi to Theodore and Kira down at the farm. Thank you for having us. It was a wonderful weekend. Everybody there was great people, salt of the earth type folks, people who are really open and interested in learning and hearing the word of God. But since I'm talking about resistance to evil by force, I'm going to bring up this book now. I'm transitioning to my book review. We read this book. Here it is. Here you can see it. We have a men's group at my parish here in town, and last year this was our book. We decided to do one book a year. We're going to be as a book club, and this was the first book that we chose. So this book, Ilyin, at the time that he wrote this, it was mainly to the reason he wrote it was as a refutation of Leo Tolstoy's writings and teachings. Because Leo Tolstoy was he was kind of a bohemian, sort of hippie-ish sort of guy that you could, if you wanted to use other terms, where he says you don't use force against people because like it's oppression, man. You know, he's that kind of person. He said, you know, he would be, if he was today, he would be saying abolish the police. That's what Lev Tolstoy would say. But it's kind of an infantile view of the world. Force is necessary. We need our police, we need our military, because if we don't have that there, then evil will use their own force, you know, to do all sorts of things. So this book is a difficult read. It's kind of a philosophical read. This is how I find it. I had to force myself through it to finish it. And I probably wouldn't have been able to do it if we weren't reading it as a group and discussing it. I do recommend the book. It's a good book, excellent book. But I'm saying it's hard to read. It probably was hard to read in the original Russian. And it's even harder to read in this translation, which may be a bad translation. And even if it was a good translation, it would be difficult to read, I think. So keep that in mind. But if I want to summarize what he's teaching in this book, he is saying what his main point is. You know, Americans, like this guy Scott, you know, he's kind of a fighter. Americans themselves are fighters. They're easy to get kind of riled up. You know, you don't want to go to war with Americans. Even though today we've been weakened by experimental medical procedures and unhealthy food, things like that, but we have a fighting spirit in America. But to use that fighting spirit, it needs to be directed in an appropriate way, because we shouldn't be eager to use violence against people. Violence should be used reservedly. You shouldn't want to do this because, as he says, it's a sinful thing to kill, to use violence, even in the context of war. In the military, people make a distinction between killing and murder sometimes. You know, some people say that it's not a sin to kill, but it is to murder. But other people say, and this is in the church, other people say that it's always a sin to kill or to murder. So this might be one of those areas where there's ambiguity in terms of the consensus from the fathers. For example, in the Holy Fathers, in terms of the death penalty, some of them say that the death penalty is not. Some of them say that the death penalty should not be allowed because that's killing, but others say that it should be allowed. So this using force. Hey, David, good to see you. Using force is, it's something that should be used reservedly, because what he says this is the most memorable line that I remember from the book, is that he calls it a blessed unrighteousness. And so our church even has prayers that if we're sending our troops off to war, the church can pray for those troops who are leaving to go kill people. They can bless it, this unrighteousness, but it's still a sin. You should do it with pain of heart. You have to do it. But you shouldn't want to. You shouldn't be eager. Is it a sin? Maybe. It may be a sin to diss rappers. I don't know. Maybe I better discuss that with my confessor. I did do a diss rap against KRS. He still hasn't gotten back to me yet. So yes. Well, I guess that's all I really wanted to say. I do today. How much time have we gone? I don't see that. KRS is dead. That's right. KRS is a goofball. Okay, well, I'm up to 15 minutes today. I didn't even look at the time. Okay, so that's my stream for the day. Thank you to the people in the chat. Christ is risen, and Penitent is out.